excited about what we're going to bring to you tonight. I'm Paul Shurik. Besides being the pastor of Faith Christian Church here in Mauston, I also lead an organization called the Northern Christian Alliance, and that's who's coming to you tonight. We exist to pray for Wisconsin, to pray for the land of the North, and to help bring God's cause to people. I've got my friend Randy Brandt here tonight. Randy is a physician's assistant, local medical facility here. Welcome, Randy.
Thank you. Thanks for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be here, and I think we've got an interesting topic to talk about tonight.
I think we do too. Yeah. Tonight we are going to talk about one of the big issues that I think is really important. It's certainly important politically, and we see it in the news all the time, and that is the issue of immigration and border security, and what kind of life do we want to live here in our country. And so when you mention the word immigration, that's kind of tame. You talk about border security, and immediately people are thinking, okay, we need to, or we don't need to, and we have all kinds of things going on. So I think that tonight, what would be important for me to think about immigration, border security? Can we focus on the things we hear on the news? What should we be doing? And we're not, just so you know, we're not going to give you a political solution here tonight. No. That's not where I want to go. What I do want to try to do is, if you're a Christian, what should you be thinking about this? Yep. Obviously, you should let your values influence how you vote, and that's really important. But backing away from the voting, backing away from the news, our country really does have a crisis going on right now. And what are we as Christians going to do about it?
Right.
And immigration's a big deal, and border security, and there's so much that happens with all that.
So, you know, it's like one of the first questions that I would have as far as like the security. You know, that's one of the is the border wall, or you know, how to what extent do we go with the security?
Yes, and that's really good. And I've thought about this so many times, and you know, build the wall or open the borders. And the truth is, my wife and I were ministering in the country of Switzerland a couple of years ago, and they were watching the news, and their comment was, it's not a big deal. Every country secures their borders. That's just expected. So I don't know why it would be wrong for you to secure your border. Right. And I would say that is just kind of an obvious thing. If anyone thinks that it's wrong to secure a border, then technically it would be wrong for me to lock my door at night.
Right.
Because I secure my border. I don't want somebody unwanted into my house that I don't know is coming, or I don't know who they are. So as a country, it's perfectly fine and a good thing to have security on our border. And I think that's just obvious. That's not really the problem that I want to address. Okay. I think that security is really important. But why is it such a crisis? And what do we do about it? The politicians evidently are not making this happen.
No.
And it's really unfortunate. Yeah. But, what do we do about it? What I hear all kinds of things that are alarming on both sides. I think the politicians are in a reactionary stalemate. Somebody proposes, we're building a wall. I say, well, let's open the borders, or let's build a bigger wall and get bigger guns and keep people out. And I said, well, let's sneak everybody in the world into America. And it's just a reactionary match. Right. Nobody's making sense.
Yeah.
So we're not proposing a political solution, a border solution, but we think we do have a little bit of a people solution. People get villainized, and that's concerning to me. Somebody comes into America, whether across the border, of course they should follow the rules. Yeah. Of course it should be done the right way.
But why are they coming across the border?
Of course, yeah. And what are they there? And are they all there because they want to come and destroy our life or take away our privileges? I don't think so. I remember being in India when I was a young man on a missions trip, and we went to this village. They call it. There were hundreds of thousands of people there, but it was a village, and we were surrounded by a bunch of little kids. And the person that took us there said, these kids have never seen a white-skinned person before. And so they thronged us. There were hundreds of them. A school had just gotten out. And they came up and they were begging for us. And I'm thinking, they're begging for money. There's no way I can help them. And they said, no, we don't want money. We would like something from America. Yeah. They said, do you have a pen, a pencil, a paperclip, a coin, a stamp? Mm-hmm. And I said, why would you want that? And this was the story. They said, in this country, we have no hope. We'll never leave. We know that.
Wow.
But even if I never get to America, if I have a coin, I can hold that coin and think somewhere in the world there is hope.
Yeah.
Somewhere there is a place where there's hope. So what I'm saying is a lot of those people on the other side of the border hoping to get to our country are people like that.
Yeah.
They're I'm sure among the throngs that come to our border, there's bad guys. I'm sure a lot of that happens, but the vast majority of them are people who don't have hope. And they look at us and they think of that Statue of Liberty and they think, that's the place I can have
They're
hope.
searching for a better life.
Yeah.
You know, we are a land of immigrants.
Yeah, I agree. And who wouldn't want that?
Right.
You know, if our kids were hungry and we were in terrible poverty and there was no way we could ever see changing that for us or them, we'd want to change something.
Yeah.
So should they follow the rules? Absolutely. We're not saying come across the border illegally. I'm just saying I think we need to detangle the fact that these people on our borders trying to come in are not all bad people. As a matter of fact, I'm sure most of them are very good people that are hopeless, that wish they could have a new life.
Yeah.
My prayer, and I think that's something we should all pray for, is that our politicians would come up with a reasonable solution that would keep security and let them come.
And then why are the immigrants, why are they coming illegally in the first place?
Yeah.
It takes some years, if not decades, to get the permission or to be allowed to have citizenship. You know, it's an expensive process.
Yeah.
And it's long drawn out.
Very difficult, I think. And so I think that's a great thing to pray. We're a prayer organization. You want to pray for something, pray that our politicians would just quit the dumb fighting and say, let's come up with a real solution. Let's have border security and come up with a reasonable way for people to get into our country.
Yeah.
But, you know, that brings up another thing about the whole issue, and that is everyone likes their way of life. You know, so here we are. We're in Wisconsin. We're not on the Texas border of Mexico, and you know, maybe you, but I've never seen the border of Mexico, and I don't know what it looks like. I would say that all of us like the way we live and where we live.
Right.
You know, if I in a year period had all my neighbors change, and my neighborhood went from a nice friendly place to a place where no one even speaks the language I speak, and there's bad stuff going on, and there's crime happening, and my stuff gets stolen, I'm a pretty unhappy person with my new neighborhood.
Oh, absolutely.
And so I think that's probably happening en masse on our border right now, where people are saying, hey, we used to have a nice life here.
Yeah.
Now it's a zoo.
And what are we going to do?
What are we going to do about it? So
yeah.
they're saying, hey, we got to do something, and then the political machine gets stuck together and it doesn't help. So I think that's an important also thing to, again, pray that we would have a good solution. But, even beyond that, to think, when we think about what Jesus would want me to do, I'm not on the border. I'm not a politician. I don't have any real influence there. But one thing that you have to think about is that what would Jesus look at? Somebody who's poor, hopeless, maybe homeless, or just having a lousy life.
And desperate.
And so how would he want me to treat them? And, I thought about this scripture a while back. I thought, I looked at some of these pictures of people on the border, and, I thought, Jesus said once in Matthew 25, I was hungry, you didn't feed me. I was homeless, you didn't take me in. So I'm not in a position to make those decisions.
Right.
But I don't want to prejudge people in my heart and say these people trying to get into our country are somehow all bad and I'm villainizing them. I want to pray for them.
Right.
And hope that, and be thankful for God's mercy for us, giving us the nice life we have, and think, there's got to be a better solution. And we just don't want to villainize them. I think that, and I see that happening. And I know Christians don't mean it.
Right.
They just get their information from hyper-sourced media that likes to start a fight.
Right. And sensationalized.
Yes.
With certain aspects. And what gets suppressed is like if there's a crime that happens to be an immigrant or an illegal immigrant, that's going to get more press, more airtime than what are those. There's those that have come over and are doing good.
Yeah,
doing good things for the country too.
Yeah, and it's all to make a political point.
Mm-hmm.
And so is it true? Sure, it's true. Are there bad people that come across our border illegally? Should people not do it? Of course that's true. But it's not the whole truth.
Right.
And so, again, pray, vote your values, but realize that you can't chart a Christian experience from a political background.
Right.
You follow Jesus. You don't follow the political rhetoric.
Yeah.
And I had an interesting experience once. This was years ago, and there was a real hot political thing that was being proposed in our country, and it was very controversial. So I went to it was like a town hall hearing on the issue. I just thought I'd go, and you had to register. So in registering, they picked numbers, and there were like 800 people at this town hall rally. Well, they picked my number. Would you like to speak? So I spoke. I don't think I said anything important.
Right.
I got done. You got 3 minutes. I got done. So we're leaving the hall. We're walking outside, my wife and I, and all of a sudden all these people came up to me and said, "Hey, Pastor." And I thought, do I know you? Oh, no, we know you. And you really spoke well. And, we'd like you to consider coming and speaking at some. And I was a little naive, and I'm thinking, I don't know you. What's the deal here? Yeah. And what it turned out to be were these people were some type of mover shaker people with a certain political agenda.
Okay.
And they saw or thought that I could speak, and they thought, hey, if we can get this guy lined up with us, there's a political gain here. I think that's what they were thinking. I don't know, because I went home and I thought about it, and what I really felt like, I'm a pastor. I'm a Christian first, then I'm a pastor, and then I'm an American, in that order, really, for me. But the thing is, I thought about that, and I thought, these guys want to tie Jesus up in a three-legged race with their party. And he's not running that race. Now, that doesn't mean that Jesus and what he wants doesn't sometimes align with certain political agendas, because certainly it does.
Yeah.
Certainly, there's rights and privileges that Jesus would say, I stand for that.
Right.
And then whatever party, whatever political persuasion latches onto that, well, yeah, they're walking with God. Right. But 5 minutes later, they may walk in another direction.
Sure.
And they want Jesus to go with them. And he's not always going there.
Right,
and that's my whole point for all these broadcasts. Okay. You can't just tie Jesus up with one persuasion and say, okay, so I'm this, so that's where Jesus is now.
Yeah.
Because Jesus might not always be there. Of course, God wants people to follow rules. God expects law and order. Of course, that's true. But he also values the poor, the underprivileged, the broken, and people that literally are fleeing for their lives should be given refuge in some way and not turned away.
Right.
That's not a political statement. That's a Jesus statement.
Sure.
That's the whole purpose of all of this. Is I hope we can inspire people to think a little more clearly.
Yeah. Oh.
And so a couple of other thoughts that I think are important is that when we think about this whole matter, a couple of things are important. I prayed about this a lot, and I thought about it, and I'm just not sure. I'm not confident that this is going to end as well as we think. And I think there's a lot of factors here. I think part of the downside of human nature likes to fight. And we like to feel that one group is better than another, whether that's race, religion, ethnic background, nationality. Yeah. It's us and them.
It's us and them.
And I think right now the politics and the media are feeding that. They're not trying to put it away. They're building on it.
Sure.
And I don't think Christians should.
Right.
And I pray, whatever you think about border security, whatever you think about this whole issue of immigration, I hope if you're a Jesus follower that you can love people, that it's not these people versus us people. We're all just people.
Right.
Yes, we're blessed with this country. We have every right to defend it, to preserve it, to try to keep a good way of life. Absolutely. But we all at some point came here from somewhere.
Right.
And people like, we like that. But now that we have it, it's I don't know that it's going to get better. I thought of I shouldn't say I don't know it's going to get any better. I'm praying that it gets better, but I don't think the solution is that easy.
Yeah.
Whether
it be a wall or whether it be just additional security.
Yeah, I mean, we could secure a border.
Yeah.
I mean, that can happen, but that doesn't solve the problem, and it leads into that. And I did some research a while back, and I just reconfirmed it now that it doesn't seem like it makes sense, but America's birth rate right now is lower than it's ever been in our history. And here's how they rate it, and I don't know this, but I looked it up. For every 1,000 women of childbearing age in America, they group them together. They rate how many live births are there in our country versus those 1,000 women of childbearing age. Sure. It's always been in our history 2, 3, or more every year, and that over 2 plus 2.5 is sustainable population level. Okay. Right now we're about at 1.6. And many parts, the coastal areas of our country, the New York and Northeastern and California and Oregon are like less than 1. Yeah. So what does that mean? We're in a population decline of natural-born citizens. Mm-hmm. That means that if we're going to keep America just the way it is, and we're losing our people, they got to come from somewhere.
Yeah, we lose our production.
We lose everything. So to say that people are going to, we have to have people, and if we're not raising them, if we're not birthing them, and we've got this giant structure that's working, I read 5 articles before I came today, and they were all about Japan and Europe and all these countries. Their concern is the same. They have great economies, but not enough people to keep them moving. Yeah. And so we're facing that, and so in a very real way, allowing people to immigrate, to do it right, to do it so it's not a 10-year process, but to allow them to do it so there is safety screening, security screening, but still allow, that could actually be a help to our country.
I was going to say, isn't it, like initially it's like a more of a burden, like if there's too much immigration, initially isn't there a burden on the economy, but then over time as the production, as people become more productive in certain jobs, and that it helps the economy long term.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, we have to have people that work. And I think in one of the articles I read about Europe is, I mean, they're at like a 30% level now of immigrant workers just to sustain their economy. That's Germany, France, and England is really close. Wow. So they can't hire enough workers there, aren't there. America's moving toward that. Sure. I mean, you see signs, help wanted everywhere, and our economy's doing good, but eventually... So all that I'm saying about that is that there are some built-in factors here. Mm-hmm. You can build the wall, but can we find a way to reasonably welcome people into our country in a secure way, in a realistic way that doesn't make it impossible, that allows them to be citizens that they can be proud of their country instead of embarrassed that they snuck in here illegally. Right. There's got to be a way. Yep. And so that's my prayer for all of this, and for us as people individually, to really think about the fact that, people are watching us. Mm-hmm. And when I say people, I'm talking about, I'm a pastor. I think just in the last number of 2 months, I've met 3 people who come to our church, gave their life to Christ, and who were atheists. I mean, they were no church background, don't believe in God, and came enough times to realize, hey, there's more to consider, and they made some great decisions of faith. Those people, before they come to church, they're watching Christians. Right. And they might not be believers in Jesus, but they can read, and they know that he said things like, love one another. If somebody asks for your shirt, give them your coat also. You're gonna prove it. Yeah, so they know that he said that. Yeah. And then they see us chanting, shouting with angry faces, these people, get them out of our country. Right. And it just doesn't send the message we want to send. Again, follow the rules. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. Have secure borders. We have to have secure borders. Right. Nobody wants to live next to an open door where anybody can come into your house. You're not sleeping in a house like that. Right. So it's all good, but let's not, Christians, this is my real thing, let's not get sucked into the media, polarized, angry arguments, always mad at somebody. Let's offer peace. Let's offer Jesus and vote your values. But, if you're not in a position to really influence the political realm, just love people. Mm-hmm. Pray for them. Yeah. And realize that, somebody has a different way of life. They speak a different language than me. I don't know, but my ancestors about 5 generations ago came here from Bohemia. 2 generations after they came, they were still speaking Bohemian. So that could have been seen as, well, why? What's the matter with you? There's just got to be a better way than hate, and that's what we're appealing to you to do.
And you speak of voting and that, like, in not listening to the media, the media as much. How do you do the research? How do you get the information?
That's really good, Randy.
You hear so much about
That's a terrible question to answer.
You hear so much about fake news, and you hear so much about so. You have to use multiple sources.
You do,
and you have to.
It's really tough. To me, this is just me. Everybody's going to have a different thing. I don't think there's an ideal political candidate. I do think that every person ought to categorize what values are really important to me and my faith, and what could I, with good conscience, say yes to.
Okay. Yeah.
And I would start on the top of that list. And one of the things we're going to broadcast about in our future, or I would like to, is just the respect for all human life. That's really important to me. Right. And so that would be a big value on the thing. So would, economy is important, but I don't want to elect somebody that can give me a good economic outcome and put into place values that would destroy other people's lives. That's not. I don't want. I'd rather not do that.
Right.
I don't know that there's an easy answer, but I think you can look at people. You can do things like, instead of the rhetoric, look at their record.
Sure.
Anybody can say things.
Yeah.
So what's the record?
Yeah.
What have they done? What have they voted for? What have they accomplished? Not just what do they get on the TV and
say what you want
talk about.
What you want to hear.
Yeah. So what have they actually done? And then if I like what they've done, that aligns with my values, okay, I'm good with that.
Okay.
And the problem with that is you're never going to, Jesus isn't running for office. And so you're not going to find somebody that's perfect.
Exactly.
And so and that's, important, because I can vote for somebody and say, this is the best of what I think we have here.
Yeah.
And I'm going to vote for him because that's my privilege as an American. But it doesn't have to be Jesus. But just because I voted for them, I don't have to say, well, they're perfect, because they're not.
No.
As much as I might like them, they're not, and that's okay.
Right.
We're not electing the bishop or the overseer or the pastor. We're electing a political leader who we hope is going to guide our country the best it can be guided under the circumstances. Yeah. But it's not easy. But that's what I would do. I would just make a priority list of, what's really important to me, and then I want to vote based on that. And immigration, frankly, to me, how about a reasonable compromise? How about come up with something that would work? It just can't be that hard.
And it's obviously a broken system, though, too.
It's broken. Because you got one side, it's like I said, it's instead of saying, why don't we come together? It's like, well, you said this. Well, now we're going to overreact on the other side.
Right.
And the chasm just keeps getting wider. Meanwhile, millions of people coming into our country illegally, the wrong way, embarrassed, and have to live a basically underground life. Yeah. And it just wouldn't have to be that way.
Yeah, right.
And that's not mine to fix. But I do challenge all of you who are listening. Our goal as Christians is to love people. Our goal as Americans is to vote and act wisely and responsibly. Mm-hmm. Hate helps no one.
No.
Helps no one. And if, my old saying is, if you can't say something good, don't say anything at all. And that's, unfortunately for me, a lot of times when political discussions start, that's just about what can be said sometimes. It's like, there's just not a lot I can say here without walking away feeling like I should have shut up. And you make enemies out of people, and I see that all the time. People that could be friends end up fighting over issues that we have no power to control at all.
Right.
It's outside of my control. The other thing is to realize that, until you've walked in, as I said, everyone's sandals, or moccasins, you just can't appreciate, like we can talk about, everybody should be welcomed and all of that, but, I watched an interview with a farmer who lived on the border, and he said, we used to put out water and food for people that would come across the border because we knew they would do it. They would just once in a while. And he said, now it's not safe to live in our farm. Every night our sheds are torn open. He said our animals get killed and slaughtered. And he said it's not safe. So regardless of what you think about the issue, if you're that man, you want to build that wall. And that's not a bad thing.
Right.
So there's issues here. And I think Jesus would just rather us be a little more understanding and then, actually do something about politics instead of just fight about it. So anyway, that's our thing. And looks like we might have a question. Do you have a few brief talking points that we might address to our legislators from a Christian lens regarding immigration reform? Well, that's a really good question. I don't know that I'm smart enough to answer that one. You want to go for that, Randy?
I don't know.
Talking points. If I had to talk to my legislatures, occasionally I get to because I'm involved in organizations that will take me on a state level, not a national one. But if I did, I would say reasonable solutions. Fighting is helping no one. No matter what party you're at, both sides of our political persuasion have points. Security is important. So is the ability to let people come to our country in a reasonable way. They've got to stop the polarized fighting, the defensive unwillingness to be I
There's got to be some give.
It's got to be some give.
Sides.
Yeah. And actually talk about solutions. I don't think at this point they lose as many votes as they think if they'd say, you know what, I'm willing to talk to you about coming up with a solution. I think they win votes.
Yes.
But they don't believe that.
No.
They think that in order for me to win my constituency, I'm going to have to drive that with hate speech or crazy radical ideas to not have any more borders and just make it one happy world and these things are absurd. So that would be a question that I don't have. Talking points would be reasonable solutions. Come up with. There's got to be a way to have a fairly secure process of getting people into our country. And beyond that, I don't know. Do your best. And so let's see if we have any more questions. And yeah, I'm not seeing questions. Some people watching us here tonight. One thing that we are planning to do is we're going to save this recording. We'll put it on a podcast setting at some point, and we'll let you know where we're going to do that in the future. We have a number of other issues we're going to talk about. I want to talk about the respect for all human life issue, and that's a huge deal because that's another very polarizing argument. But I think that one's a little easier to get to a solution for. We're going to talk about sexuality in our country. What does that look like? What about all this confusion in our nation? What should Christians really be thinking about that? And again, not so many political solutions to these, but there are spiritual solutions.
And they're not easy topics to talk about, but it's good to talk about them and focus on your faith through these discussions.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And that's where it all started with the reason I asked Randy to join me today is last summer it was an exciting experience, and Randy and I got to do a little mountain biking together, and I don't know who did what, but he came along with me to do some mountain biking, and other than a small injury, we were all okay. And on the way back, Randy had just some really honest questions about some of the issues that are in our society, and it just dawned on me, Randy's a part of our church, he's a friend, all of that, but I think there's a lot of people with those questions, and these really aren't Sunday morning sermon topics. No. It's not that I'm afraid to talk about them.
And we're afraid to ask them, though, too.
And people are afraid to ask because, am I going to be stupid? Yeah. Am I on the wrong side? What do I think?
Right.
But even as a pastor, I don't want to take Sunday after Sunday dealing with current events, build the wall, this issue, that issue.
Right.
Because, like I said, there are people out there, like we just mentioned, these atheist kids.
Yeah.
They come to church. They hear about Jesus. hearing about immigration is not getting them to Jesus.
Right.
Hearing about his cross will get them to Jesus.
Correct.
So I want to focus on that on Sundays, but these things do need to be talked about.
Right.
And so if you have questions, you have topics you'd like us to address, this would be a great thing. Put them on our website or our Facebook page. Say, hey, why not talk about this? And we'll consider it. And I don't know, Randy, you got anything else you want to say?
No, thank you for joining us, and I appreciate your time and look forward to another conversation.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you again for joining us, and we'll talk to you again soon.